Before we begin, a quick note. This episode discusses death, decomposition, domestic abuse, and the failure of a community to notice when someone disappears. Listener discretion is advised. If that's hard for you today, it's okay to sit this one out or come back when you're ready. This is Natural Queen 77 TV. Picture this: a small bedsit flat above a busy shopping center in North London. The mail keeps arriving, the television is still on, wrapped Christmas gifts sit untouched on the floor, and behind that door for over 2 years, nobody knocks. This is the story of Joyce Carol Vincent, a woman who was surrounded by people for most of her life and who somehow impossibly died completely alone and stayed that way for longer than most of us can imagine. Joyce Carol Vincent was born in 1965 to Grenadian parents and grew up in London. She wasn't a recluse. Friends who knew her in the 1980s and 90s described a vibrant, glamorous woman, someone with a wide social circle, connections in the music industry, and what looked from the outside like a full life. But somewhere along the way, that life started to come apart quietly. She moved through a series of jobs. Around 2001, she spent time in a domestic violence shelter. And slowly, the people who once knew her lost track of where she was and stopped asking. She reportedly struggled with asthma and a peptic ulcer. Nothing about her health explains what happened next. What explains it is something much harder to sit with: isolation so complete that her death produced no ripple at all. On the 25th of January 2006, housing officers forced open the door of a bedsit above Wood Green Shopping City in the Haringey borough of North London. They weren't looking for a body. They were dealing with unpaid rent. What they found was a skeleton, the remains of a 38-year-old woman, later identified through dental records because so little else remained. The television was still switched on. Wrapped Christmas presents sat nearby, never opened. Based on the state of the post piled behind the door, investigators believe Joyce had been dead since December of 2003, meaning her body lay in that flat undiscovered for over 2 years. An inquest later returned an open verdict. There was no forced entry, no evidence of foul play, just an ordinary door in an ordinary building that nobody thought to check. Here's the part that makes this case different from almost every other one we cover on this show. There is no killer, no suspect, no trial. The real question isn't who did this, it's how does a person disappear from a crowded city and have literally no one notice? Neighbors in the building assumed the flat was simply empty. Family didn't check in. Friends assumed she'd moved on with her life. Every single person in Joyce's orbit made a small, understandable assumption, and every one of those assumptions was wrong. Joyce's story could have ended in that flat, filed away as a housing department footnote. Instead, filmmaker Carol Morley learned of the case and spent years tracking down the people who once knew Joyce, old friends, former partners, co-workers, to try to understand who she really was. The result was the 2011 docudrama Dreams of a Life, starring Zaw Ashton, which blended real interviews with dramatized recreation. The film doesn't solve anything because there's nothing to solve. What it does is force viewers to sit with an uncomfortable question. How well do we actually know the people around us? And how long would it take before someone noticed we were gone? Joyce's case has since echoed well beyond the documentary, inspiring music from artists including Steven Wilson and Paloma Faith, and prompting renewed conversation in the UK about isolation, welfare checks, and how easily people can fall through the cracks of systems built to catch them. There's no twist ending here, no arrest, no justice to deliver. Just a woman named Joyce Carol Vincent, who lived a life full of people and died in a room that stayed silent for 2.5 years. If this episode sits heavy with you, let it and maybe let it do one more thing check on somebody today. A friend you haven't heard from in a while, someone who's gone quiet. It cost nothing, and for Joyce, it came far too late. Thanks for listening to Natural Queen 77 TV. If this episode moved you, hit follow, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. We'll see you next time.